Good day, ladies and gentlemen, dear colleagues. Welcome to join this side event organized by the World Federation of Engineering Organizations at the United Nations High-Level Political Forum. The theme of this year's high-level political forum is to sustainable and resilient recovery from the COVID-19 pandemic that promotes the economic, social, and environmental dimensions of sustainable development, building an inclusive and effective path for the achievement of the 2030 Agenda in the context of the decades of action and delivery for sustainable development. At the beginning of the decades of action and in the midst of the challenges and uncertainties, I think it is timely important for the high-level political forum to review the progress we have made to achieve the SDGs for the last extraordinary year, and to call for coordinated and comprehensive actions in which young generation, especially young engineers, have a crucial role to play. This side event focuses on young engineers and SDG 13 with the theme deploying global youth capacity in UN policy and engineering for SDG 13. The side event aims to engaging young engineers, men and women, more actively to combat climate change. Climate emergencies represents the most serious issues of our time. The magnitude of the threat of climate change is enormous. And to deal with the climate changes requires continuous efforts from generation to generation. And this young generation has great responsibilities. The World Federation of Engineering Organizations, WFEO, is the world's largest engineering organization. The primary purpose of WFEO has always been to seek progress and solutions to enhance societal well-being. And our mission right now is to unite and encourage engineers across the world to accelerate the actions to achieve the United Nations SDGs by 2030. The WFEO Model Code of Practice on Principles of Climate Change Adaptation provides guidance to engineers to consider the implication of climate change in their professional practice. WFEO summarizes its positions and commitments to act on climate change through a declaration on climate emergency in the frame of COP25 in 2019, and we're also preparing our action and our contribution to the COP26 this year later. WFEO has working closely together with UNESCO and other partners to advance 2030 agenda. One important work is to make the March 4th as the World Engineering Day for Sustainable Development, which is approved by the UNESCO in 2019. We have contributed also to the second engineering report launched on the March 4th, the World Engineering Day this year. This is a flagship report of engineering by UNESCO to stress the crucial role of engineering for sustainable development. It takes the best efforts of engineers, especially young engineers, to understand, quantify, and adapt to the climate change so as to minimize the impact of increasingly severe climate crisis. WFEO works through its young engineers and future leaders committee to get young engineers involved in the world's activities to gain and share knowledge and experience, and to get this committee abreast of global policies, which prepares them, I mean, the young engineers, to take the future leadership roles. By here, please allow me to invite the Assistant Director General of UNESCO for Natural Science, Shamila, to give her keynote opening address. Shamila, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Professor Gong. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, young youth and youth from across the world, welcome to this very unusual session of understanding how youth are contributing to the implementation of the Sustainable Development Goals. I would like to share with you a presentation that we have put together to give you an overview of the role of youth in the Sustainable Development Goals. Now, as Professor Gong has explained, we really do count on the support from youth across the world. It is critical for us and for our work. And as you will see in this particular slide, I'm going to give you an overview of the role of youth and how we are working with youth across the world. Now, UNESCO is the United Nations Educational, Scientific, and Cultural Organization of the United Nations. As a scientific body with this mandate in science, we understand the role of science and engineering as really the engine of prosperity. From the cars that we drive, the trains that get us here, our smartphones, the energy that lights up this building, the clothes we wear, and the food we eat. All of these have been developed and improved through research, education, scientific education, and engineering. So science and engineering can fuel our imagination, and science and engineering is humankind's greatest enterprise. So we need more and better science today, not just for its technology, but for not even for health or longevity, but for the hope of wisdom, which our kind of culture must acquire for its survival. Now, if I were to present to you an overview of all our work, I'm going to start with the launch of the UNESCO Engineering Report. The first report was produced 10 years ago, and thanks to this exceptional partnership with the Chinese Academy of Engineering, Tsinghua University, and the World Federation of Engineering Organizations, 10 years on, we were able to produce, in cooperation with UNESCO and its partners, on World Engineering Day, a launch of a brand new report on engineering for sustainable development. Certainly, science, engineering, and technology hold important answers to key questions, and we must address today about climate change, sustainable energy for all, and even international cooperation, scientific cooperation for peace and sustainable development. Now, there are equal opportunities, and they are out there, but how to ensure a more inclusive, gender-based profession to better respond to the shortages of engineers for implementing the SDGs. From the cars we need, from the bridges, the schools, the hospitals, and even addressing basic needs today, health services. So this document, actually the launch of this report on the 4th of March this year, was symbolic after the pandemic. And it was during the pandemic that the authors from across the world got together and gave a snapshot of the engineering innovations that are shaping our world, emerging technologies such as big data and AI, and it provides an analysis of how the transformation of engineering education and capacity building should take place at the dawn of the fourth industrial revolution to ensure that no one is left behind. It also summarizes the trends of engineering across the different regions of the world, and for that I want to sincerely thank the World Federation of Engineering Organizations, the co-authors of this particular book, and especially WFEO for leading us in producing this exceptional document at a very important time. So how are we engaging the youth and the young scientists in engineering? Well, there's a dedicated chapter on climate change. It's called "And Climate Emergency." Climate change is really having a serious impact on the development of many nations for engineers, like the effect on infrastructure. And so development will have dire consequences. It's enough to see the COVID and how engineering technology has even shaped the response to the COVID, from hospital care, patient care, to tracking, to new systems of healthcare services, but also understanding how the COVID virus can be combated. So there is a need for innovative engineering and technology-based solutions, and the engineering capacity and competence building activities are critical if we want to ensure an adequate supply of engineers to work on these global challenges. So there is an extremely important role for youth to play in this endeavor. Now, the document itself goes on to talk about the engineering innovations and the sustainable development goals. And here in the first chapter is really an overview of engineering solutions to all of the problems that we face today in the world. And chapter 3 actually attempts to further describe how these engineering innovations are actually responding to the emerging challenges like climate change, biodiversity decline, as well as a role for international cooperation and sustainable energy systems. I would recommend all of you to download the report from the UNESCO website. It is free of charge. Please use it, share with us, and share with us your thoughts and ideas for the next engineering report. Now, a particular chapter has actually focused and giving importance to those people who are at the front line of combating the COVID and improving human health. And to these healthcare workers across the world, I salute you from UNESCO and our 196 member states to sincerely thank you from across the world for all that you have done. We see here on the bottom of the slide, contact tracing and the workflow. All this is due to you, the young engineers and the youth who have brought this to the forefront and developing new technologies to combat this particular disease. So we also have seen an increased role for artificial intelligence. Systems and robotics have been used. For example, nurses working in the red zone of hospitals to help doctors and nurses, to help them to reduce the number of infections. We have the Internet of Medical Things today. We have information communication technologies. All of these efforts have hastened the ability to quickly and accurately detect the viral infection and really make available to a number of complex life-supporting services to people, such as ventilators, as well as monitoring devices for the virus itself. So this powered big data and AI has proved to be extremely useful during this period. Now, certainly strengthening the engineering innovations to accelerate the delivery of the SDGs are extremely important. A great deal needs to be done by engineers to provide solutions to the world's most pressing problems: climate change, water sanitation, and reduction in greenhouse gases, but also sustainable energy sources. For that, we need a much more interdisciplinary, intersectoral, and international cooperation. So we need to invest in our youth. We need to bring on board our youth because they hold the engineering solutions and innovations to help us in these tiring times. Now, I just would like to give you a very brief overview of what UNESCO is doing for young engineers. And here's a slide of women engineers. The L'Oreal UNESCO Prize for Women in Science Programs highlights the achievements of young women researchers. The International Rising Talents Scheme provides a bursary and a prize award for scientists, women scientists, every year. Right now, we also have the Young Talents, a program and network covering 116 countries worldwide, awarding fellowships every year. So UNESCO and L'Oreal contribute to the recognition of young women researchers and engineers. So please join the movement and join us in this. Another area I think which is very important to us as we hear about biodiversity decline, you may be aware that UNESCO designates sites every year: World Heritage Sites, World Natural Sites, Biosphere Reserves, and Geoparks. And youth are actively engaged in the 714 biosphere reserves in 129 countries. What are these biosphere reserves? They are living laboratories where people can show it's possible to live in harmony with nature. Scientific, technological monitoring of the biodiversity, as well as socio-cultural cohesion and adaptation, mitigation strategies, mitigation to climate change and sustainable development, including biodiversity restoration, conservation, environmental education, raising awareness, and waste management. This year, we celebrate 50 years of this program called the Man and Biosphere Program, and 260 million people call biosphere reserves their home. But we also have an exceptional network in the 714 biosphere reserves in 129 countries. That's called the MAB Youth Network. And in 2019, these MAB youth marched up to the ECOSOC in New York and presented in the UN General Assembly how they are protecting biodiversity. So we do need the voice of the youth if we want to protect Mother Earth. And I sincerely thank them for all their contributions. Another program which is dear to us is engaging the youth and the young scientists in a unique program called the Geoparks. So UNESCO is home to the International Union of Geoscientists. It's the only UN organization to be mandated to study, to protect Mother Earth and Earth's natural resources. So the first Global Geoparks Youth Program will be coming up soon. I advise all of you to please follow us on the website. We are looking for proposals that contribute to the concept of geoparks to address heritage protection, natural geological heritage, hazards mitigation, climate change, sustainable development. So please join the Young Ambassadors program if you would like to support us, but also to be part of this program. And another very important initiative we have taken on board is a program on disaster risk reduction with youth entities across the world. Here we also will be working with the World Federation of Engineering Organizations, bringing on board the necessary expertise, multi-stakeholder engagement to understand the disaster risks. We know that disaster risks occur continuously today, and we do need science, technology, and innovation to build resilience of these communities. So UNESCO is collaborating with young professionals, engineers, scientists on disaster risk reduction and climate change mitigation. And we are looking forward to working with you, the youth, and joining our initiatives. And I thank the World Federation of Engineering Organizations for all their support and contributions in this initiative. Now, and we are also working with the Africa Youth Advisory Board, which was established by the African Union. And it's really institutionalizing the relationship between children as youth, as major stakeholders in DRR on the continent. And this advisory youth movement in Africa is actually producing surveys and also bringing people on board to understand water in the context of the COVID-19 recovery and how to initiate new activities in Africa. I'm just going to go over very quickly the disaster risk reduction networks that we have. And this also involves all of the WFEO associations. We have the Asia Pacific Youth and Young Professionals in Science, Engineering, Technology, and Innovation. And we work with a number of other different agencies like the UNDRR and UNDP. Now, UInspire advocates and facilitates youth in Asia and Pacific to strengthen the science, technology, innovation potential. And we have developed toolkits for young professionals, and we look forward to working with you so that we can outreach these to other youth. And we've organized a number of webinars, and we look forward to working with you on that. Now, we also have another youth network in the Caribbean region, and this is the Caribbean Risk and Disaster Management Youth Platform, which was established recently and will be launched in the summer of this year. Another initiative which I'd like to inform you about is no disaster risk reduction and no climate change, smartphone, education, and entertainment. So we call it edutainment application. So the Africa Youth Advisory Board partnered with UNESCO and many other youth organizations across the world. And for that, UNESCO dearly thanks you for bringing on board your information, your scientific knowledge, and bringing on board all the partners to produce this very important, unusual applications, knowing disaster risk reduction, knowing climate change, and we have many others in different languages. And we thank all the partners who have contributed to this very unusual initiative. And very briefly, I would like to inform you of UNESCO's Youth Leadership Camp for Climate Crisis. And it was organized in one of Indonesia's UNESCO's designated sites, Biosphere Reserve. 50 selected youth, over 1,000 applicants were chosen, And we have built a network of committed young Indonesians who will be working with others across the world to address climate crisis, its impacts, and biodiversity decline. So we look forward to working with you in all of UNESCO's designated sites for the implementation of the Agenda 2030 to show that it's possible to protect Mother Earth, to live in harmony with nature, and promote this coalition with nature through science, education, communication, and culture. Now, the last initiative I want to inform you about is about water. We all know that without water, we cannot even wash our hands and cannot control this pandemic. So what is UNESCO doing to mobilize youth and young scientists, young engineers across the world? We have a winter school under the UNESCO World Water Assessment Program for Youth, and I advise you to follow this on YouTube. We also have a youth and climate change in the context of the World Water Development Report, focusing on water and climate change. And we are mobilizing youth at the COP on water and climate change with the UNESCO Intergovernmental Hydrological Program, and we look forward to working with you. The dialogue has already started with the youth, so let's try to work together for a water-secure world for our current generation and future generations. Now, as I mentioned, water is so important to combat this particular pandemic, but water is an essential necessity. Water is life. Water is the connector for all the SDGs. So the Intergovernmental Hydrological Program is supporting the Human Rights Youth Challenge 2021, which focuses on the impact of climate change on human rights to water and sanitation. A youth steering committee has been selected, and we look forward to working with them, especially in the second international conference on water, megacities, and global change. And dear participants, safe access to water in times of crisis and beyond, Voices from the Caribbean Youth is also a very important and relevant initiative, and I welcome you all to join us in this initiative. In Africa, we are working with the African Ministers' Council on Water, AMCOW, and the International Science Council Regional Office for Africa, together with the World Federation of Engineering Organization, to bring youth together to provide solutions for water-secure Africa in the form of scientific research articles. Through this exercise, youth will be exposed on how to write scientific articles and how to bring out-of-the-box solutions for water-secure Africa. And I thank WFEO for the partnership with this. We're also looking forward to working with you on the initiative we are promoting, which is called Open Science, Knowledge Sharing for the Rest of the World. UNESCO is drafting the UNESCO recommendation on open science to reduce the knowledge gap between countries and nations, to ensure that no one is left behind. Open science will be a game changer, and opening engineering science will be an even better game changer. So please join us all in this initiative, because we do need science for sustainable development and science for society. Thank you very much, Professor Gong. Congratulations for this exceptional meeting. We look forward to partnering with all of you, and thank you to the World Federation of Engineering Organizations. I thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Shamila, for your very informative and inspiring speech. Show us so many initiatives, actions, networks, calling for the engagement of young scientists, young engineers to support these activities against climate change, natural disaster, and so on and so forth, to achieve SDGs in different regions for the whole globe, left no one behind. Thank you very much again, Shamila. Please keep with us. Perhaps we'll have later in the Q&A session some questions to you. Now let's move to the next speaker, who is the chairman of the committee of WFEO for young engineers and future leaders, Firas, who is based on Beirut. Firas, please, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for attending today's side event. Let me start by sharing my slides. My name is Firas Diab. I'm the chair of the Young Engineers Future Leaders Committee in the WFEO. Today, we're having a side event in one of the most prestigious forums, which is the high-level political forum on sustainable development. I'm a transportation engineer, and I'm glad to be today to share my experience we're trying to deploy in the Committee of Young Engineers in WFEO. First of all, I would like to have a small brief on our organization, which is a peak body for professional engineering organization. It was founded in 1968. It's currently having more than 100 national professional engineering institutions, and we're representing more than 30 million engineers with 12 international and regional professional engineering institutions. The national members of the WFEO are from several countries, which are shown now on the screen. They cover most parts of the world, and every committee of WFEO is expanding more and more to have more ambassadors in the committees and the different standing committees and policy implementation committees. The WFEO was founded under the auspices of UNESCO, and it's a recognized NGO. It currently co-chairs the major science and technology group and UN, and have representation at major UN organizations, and it's based in Paris at the UNESCO. These are the standing technical committees which are currently there in the WFEO, and today we're representing the Young Engineers Future Leaders Committee, which is hosted by Lebanon. We are working with different international organizations like the UN Economic and Social Council, the UN DESA, the UNDP, the UNESCO, the UNIDO, UNFCCC, and UN Framework on Climate Change, UN ICDR, IAEA, and the World Meteorological Organization, and also with the World Bank. The key objective of the World Federation of Engineering and Organization and its standing committees is to advance the UN SDGs through engineering. We need always to ensure that we have more engineers with the right skills to develop the technological and engineering solutions for sustainable development. And we always try to say that on the 4th of March, the WFEO is always celebrating the World Engineering Day, which is happening every year on the 4th of March. And this is always an opportunity to celebrate the impact and the outcomes of engineering for a better world. As a committee of the young engineers, we have a vision to be acknowledged leader for the young voices of the engineering profession, with a mission to be a sustainable ecosystem that provides support, resources, and a platform for young engineers with the following aims. We're always targeting to create an ecosystem that enables the support and youth innovation for young engineers, trying to have a regular conversation between WFEO and the young engineers, giving mentorship programs between young engineers and partner communities, with a target to increase the understanding of the international and the regional awareness on the impact of globalization on young engineers, and always addressing the issue of sustainability for the well-being of the engineering profession. The committee is supporting WFEO's President Task Force, engaging with the United Nations Commission on the Sustainable Development to provide the engineering perspective on the current issues. Our main activities, which happened on the World Engineering Day 2020, where we celebrated the achievement of young engineers around the world. More than 400 young engineers participated in a competition that highlights the advancement of the UN SDGs from around 70 countries. And in 2021, we have launched the YEFL video campaign, where more than 40 young engineers from more than 20 countries from many of the leading engineering universities of the world showcased their videos that highlighted the important role that young engineers play towards accelerating actions towards sustainable development goals. Also, we have launched at WFEO, and we participated as the YEFL in the Engineering Heroes which is a mini-series launched by WFEO in 2020, every session was focusing on one of the SDGs and the Global Agenda 2030. On another side, we have launched a webinar series under the title of Engineering the Future, where we have focused on several of the hot topics which are related for resilience and sustainability of young engineers, and where we targeted the issues which are related of the industrial revolution and the climate action, and where we have provided certain recommendations and conclusions which would give support for young engineers all over the world. And also, we have participated this year in the preparation of the second UNESCO engineering report, the report that highlights the importance of engineering in achieving the SDGs, and we participated in a round table on this engineering report on the 4th of March. Now, going back to the topic of today and the issue of climate action, we're always mentioning that WFEO is continuing to raise awareness on the climate emergency and the urgent need for action among all our national members and organizations. And on this behalf, we have, in the frame of COP25 in December 2019, expressed our concern on the climate emergency, and we summarized our position as WFEO and committees on the Declaration of Climate Emergency. This declaration raised the importance of involving and empowering the most vulnerable categories of people across the world to face this crisis, stating that nobody must be left behind. Now, what young engineers could do about climate action? First of all, engineers have an ethical responsibility to incorporate sustainability principles into their work. Second, engineers have a key role to play in developing sustainable solutions and low-cost, accessible sources of renewable energy that will reduce greenhouse gas emissions. Third point, engineers need to have a bigger voice in the media to advocate for change. And fourth point, engineers need to bring together stories from around the world and put them side by side. This may encourage to evaluate our own practices and solutions and inspire new thinking. WFEO Committee for Young Engineers Future Leaders aims for engineering community where a diverse and inclusive membership can work collaboratively towards innovative climate mitigation strategies, engaging women and young engineers in particular to combat climate change. We have set up a working group on SDG 13 to include young engineers into the global WFEO climate emergency work. The aim of this group is to establish that strategy and define how young engineers can contribute to SDG 13 and the WFEO Declaration on Climate Emergency. The objectives: to collect and record best practices and challenges faced by young engineers all over the world in climate action, to investigate the gaps and define the climate action strategy for young engineers, and to assist with the analysis of the technical, economic, and environmental feasibility of sustainable development proposals and the implementation of best practices to achieve SDG 13. The expected results would be the role of the WFEO young engineers in SDG 13 is defined and deployed. YEFL committee engage with young engineer representatives of all WFEO members and collaborate with external organizations such as MGACY, YAG, and UCAN. Finally, the world's engineers united in rising to the world's challenges for a better, sustainable world. Thank you.
Thank you, Firas, for the introduce to the actions we have taken in WFEO and with our partners, especially young engineers related actions. Now let's move to the next speaker. recognition the importance of the youth and young scientists, a special group we called advisory group, youth advisors group to the Secretary General of United Nations has been set. And today we have Nisreen to give us an introduction of the activities of this group. Nisreen, the floor is yours. Nisreen is from Sudan. Please.
Yes, indeed, I am from Sudan, and thank you very much, sir. My name is Nisreen Elsaim, the chair of the UN Secretary General's Youth Advisory Group on Climate Change. And to give a small introduction of the Youth Advisory Group, we are a group of 7 people representing all of the world regions, and we come from a very various backgrounds. We have Vlad from Moldova representing Eastern Europe, and he's the economist of the group. We have Nathan from France representing Western Europe, and he's a policy focused person. And we have Paloma from Brazil representing South America, and she's a lawyer. We have Sofia from North America, and she's Iranian American. She's a communication focused, and she's a student at the Cornell University. Archana is a biodiversity focused and indigenous leader from India representing Asia. And we have Ernest from Fiji representing the small island state and the Pacific. The group is very diverse, and the main focus of the group, main mission, let me say, is to be the bridge between young people around the world from different backgrounds with the Secretary General. And it's somehow one way of UN acknowledging that young people are actually on the front line of the climate change and will be the most impacted by climate change and climate crisis too. Having said that, well, my background is physics. I did physics for my bachelor degree, and then I did a master degree on renewable energies engineering. So I mixed between engineering and science and pure science. And I can understand why it's important to include scientists and engineering people in the discussion of climate change. Climate change is a very much cross-cutting issue, and cross-cutting issues need cross-cutting solutions. Sometimes we make some mistakes as academicians and scientists to take a silo and put our knowledge and science in books and shelves. But with climate change and very much challenges climate change is presenting nowadays, we understand that we are very much in need for science and scientists, and of course engineering. Building resilience of the very least developed, or let me say very vulnerable communities to climate change. Now in Sudan, I joined late because we had a blackout. Imagine having a blackout with a country that have sun more than 12 hours a day, and with a very much significant amount of sun ray that can actually generate a lot of solar energy with very massive spaces and less population. Very much having a very hot weather these days. So the materials that we use in building our houses have to be also adapting with the changes of climate. Global warming is only increasing and only getting worse and worse according to the UNFCCC emission report and according to the last IPCC report of 1.5. Actually, the scenario we are going in, only science like engineering and like carbon capture and like ways of building resilience of the communities can save us from. Unfortunately, world leaders doesn't listen that much for scientists and for people who have the actual knowledge, and they just decide to take political decisions and, well, let us say, win another round of presidency or ministry or whatever. But at least now they are acknowledging our turn, and I very much welcome and very much highlight the role of the IPCC in putting science, and also UNESCO in putting science on core of the climate change discussion. Now it's the time to put young people, young engineers, and young scientists on the core also of the discussion, because we are not only having climate injustice issue, we are also facing intergenerational injustice issue. These issues are all combined together, which will make us find a solution for our problems and for our communities. Thank you very much for giving me the floor, but I just want to mention that now the world and the media is very much hazard about Canada reaching 49 degrees. Well, I want to bring a news in sub-Saharan Africa, in many places in the world, it's the normal to have 49 degrees. And you can still see people drinking tea, barbecuing in the street, and also having cigarettes or smoking or anything, but these communities are the most vulnerable to that, and we need to do something, and we need to help young people building their capacities, make them understand that being an engineer is a message, and being a scientist is a message to the world, and we must make the world get benefit from us and from the capabilities young people have. Thank you very much once again. I'm very glad to be here with you and looking forward for the Q&A session.
Thank you so much. And let's move to the next speaker, who is talking about UNESCO youth, how to say this, the UNESCO Youth Climate Action Network, UCAN. Manon, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, President Gong, and thank you very much for the WFEO for inviting me to join in this discussion. Can you see my screen? Can you just check?
Yes.
Thank you very much. So today I would like to build on what the colleagues just said, SDG, Shamila, Nair-Bedouelle, but also Firas, and also your introduction, President Gong, to highlight and to speak about the key role of a young scientist in developing climate action and developing the Youth UNESCO Climate Action Network, which is a new initiative of UNESCO. So let's start by reminding that by building on what Nisreen just presented, Agenda 2030 identifies youth as a critical agent of change with while complying every SDG. Every SDG requires youth action and participation to succeed. And UNESCO, as AD presented before, UNESCO recognizes it is critical to capitalize on youth creativity, knowledge, and innovation, and potential to drive this change and to promote peace and sustainable development in the country and communities. In particular, I would like to highlight that youth are fully fledged actors in UNESCO's strategy for action on climate change. The strategy actually recognizes that youth embody the present and the future of our planet. And actually the strategy calls for mobilizing youth networks, including young men and women scientists, to promote mitigation and adaptation to climate change. And you saw, I think, in the previous presentation that Shamila Nair-Bedouelle presented a lot of initiatives of UNESCO, so I won't come back on it. So actually, what we can say that UNESCO multiple function at the international, regional, and national levels, its extensive expertise in its field of competence, and also its capacity to leverage multidisciplinary function places the organization in a strong position to build capacity of youth, especially in sciences, mathematics, technology, and engineering, but also to promote youth engagement practices overall, to enable young people to become today's and tomorrow drivers of green economies, green growth, and sustainable development. In the framework of the UNESCO Operational Strategy on Youth 2014-2021, and in line also with the UN Strategy on Youth 2030, UNESCO has indeed been deeply committed for several years in engaging with youth and to make youth engagement meaningful. How UNESCO is doing that? UNESCO is basically engaging with youth, not only as beneficiaries, as recipients of activities, but also as real actors, as real knowledge holders and partners in implementing, in designing, and in shaping project and activities. And I thank again ADG Shamila Nair-Bedouelle for presenting the previous activities. So this is also what UNESCO aims to do through the implementation of the Youth UNESCO Climate Action Network. This network was launched in Madrid in the UN Climate Change Conference of Parties in 2019. So what is UCAN? UCAN is a network, a youth-led network that aims to enhance the efforts implementing by UNESCO and youth network to address climate change. How? By strengthening international cooperation with and between youth climate action worldwide, notably those operating within UNESCO's areas of competence. Actually, I don't know, I would like to remind UNESCO's motto is changing minds, not the climate. So through this motto, UCAN aims at contributing to rethinking sustainability globally through a multidisciplinary approach and youth action under UNESCO's mandate. Actually, here I would like to echo, because I want to have a better sentence than what Nisreen said. She just said cross-cutting issues needs cross-cutting solution. And this is what is meant with this multidisciplinary approach with the UCAN network to address and provide solution to mitigation to climate change. How are we proceeding? We have with us actually 15 representatives of youth-led networks existing and actually acting in different regions with different backgrounds. And these representatives of youth-led networks work jointly with UNESCO Secretariat in shaping and operationalizing the future UCAN network. This includes identifying the knowledge, the resources, the action already existing, both at UNESCO and in the youth-led network, with the aim of actually identifying how we can promote this existing action and knowledge, how to leverage and scale them up, but also how to fill the gaps and to increase the impact and raise climate ambition. How this is being done? The youth representatives are actually in direct contact and consulting with the different UNESCO's entities, including the field offices, but also the youth network themselves, and also the UN partners agencies. The idea is really to determine what to build as a network, with whom, and how to collaborate to capitalize on existing resources and to enhance youth climate action. So, in this process of identifying key action areas on how to develop this UCAN network, efforts are being made by UNESCO to actually build on the areas where the organization has already comparative advantages, meaning especially the use of education, science, and capacity building toward the completion of SDG 13. And particularly, I would like to highlight the target 13.3, improving education, awareness raising, and human and institutional capacity on climate change mitigation, adaptation, impact reduction, and early warning. Actually, UCAN believes that the science and knowledge, including local and indigenous knowledge, are key for understanding climate change. And I won't repeat again what has been presented before because the presentation was so well done. Science, technology, and innovation is also a key thematic and a key focus area of the UNESCO strategy for action on climate change. And it is also underlined in the 2021 UNESCO engineering report that was presented previously to you. And in that, youth engineers have a key role. And this is why we believe that young engineers can play a key role in the development of UCAN. How? In building on the previous and valuable existing partnership with WFEO, but also on building on a UNESCO valuable experience. And the idea, and here I would echo Firas and his presentation of the strategy, the idea would be to develop even better youth engagement and involving even better young engineers in the development of UCAN and in the achievement of the SDG 13. So how? First of all, in enhancing young audience outreach, awareness, and interest about the crucial role of scientific disciplines and in addressing climate change, in particular at the local level, by mobilizing UNESCO and UCAN reach networks. The second aspect will be really to increase youth capacity building by reflecting jointly with the young engineers how to develop science, mathematics, technology, and engineering, how to improve these resources to provide the young people with the necessary skills and tools to take appropriate climate action. According to UCAN vision, an important point, and this is also what UNESCO promotes, is encouraging also a youth-to-youth approach, meaning that youth don't have to be only the recipients of these tools and knowledges. Youth have to contribute actively and to co-create this knowledge and these resources. So it means implying them while developing the reports. It means implying them in developing toolkits, in developing the programs, and designing actually the activities. On the other hand, we don't have to forget, and here is a key point, that youth already have a great capacity to act, that they need tools to improve the action, but they already have a great capacity to action and to lead action. So we need, through our programs, to integrate even more youth and young scientists and engineers to deliver the program and to shape the programs toward improving our climate action. And finally, a key aspect of UCAN is to encourage interdisciplinary climate knowledge and scientific cooperation for climate change, in particular at the grassroots level. So this is also what we are seeing today with this interesting discussion with the different networks. We need to enhance youth scientific partnership and collaboration to have a greatest impact. So let's bring our young engineers on board and developing our climate action. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Manon. Now we are run out of time, but I still want to show you a short video, which is produced. We get from the video campaign by the young engineers at the World Engineering Day this year, to show how they help to achieve the SDGs. Yvonne, please show the video. No voice. There's no voice.
Engineers now have the following important duties: develop instrumentation to measure and monitor pollution, create industrial processes to reduce the use of energy and other resources, and to eliminate waste wherever possible. Reconsider the total input-output of operations of a complete life cycles, design energy-efficient buildings, create longer life facilities that can be maintained at lower cost, recover, reuse, and remanufacture of byproducts from resource development and industrial processing. Engineers, you can build the planet. In celebrations of UNESCO's World Engineering Day for Sustainable Development, we at Association of Nordic Engineers have chosen to highlight how our student network are working actively with solving the SDGs on a daily basis. We at Association of Nordic Engineers does not only think that international collaboration, but also Nordic collaboration are crucial to solving this sustainability crisis. And therefore, we are glad to showcase how STEM students across the Nordics are working effectively to solve this crisis.
As an engineer, I hope to contribute to solutions that can minimize our impact on the environment.
I've always been very fascinated about how the stuff around me works and how it's made. That's why engineering is really the natural choice for me for education. Being able to develop something, make it, and see that it works, that's just so fulfilling. And when it doesn't work, then the toolbox that engineering education has given me is really, really helpful to make it work.
In my field of engineering, I work with problems related to indoor environment and energy use in buildings. I like this is the type of field that affects all of us, and good engineering solutions can lead to a more sustainable building or a higher satisfaction with an office or a home. In our organization, we work with sustainability internally by reducing our environmental footprint, and externally by improving the education of our future engineers who plays an important role in the transition to a more sustainable society.
In industrial economics, we work with sustainability through learning about different tools we can use to help develop projects in a sustainable way when we start working. We have also learned what kind of challenges and possibilities there is in the future. We also focus on the social aspects that are connected to the United Nations global goals, and not only how the natural resources affect the global warming.
I think cooperation between the Nordic countries is key to reaching the Sustainable Development Goals by jointly coming up with new solutions to benefit our global society.
I have a master's in mechanical engineering from the TU, where my focus was primarily on maritime studies. Within the maritime industry, there is a strong tradition of collaboration between the Nordic countries. And I think that has really enabled us to be sort of leading within this sector. If this is something we could take to other sectors, I think that's really something to aspire towards. I think the Nordic people really have the same sort of cultural and identity that makes collaboration just really easy.
I wanted to be an engineer because of the possibility to be working with important problems that impacts our society and way of living.
The goals I have for myself as an engineer is to come up with innovations that can affect our future and society for the better. I also want to be a good role model for other women out there and encourage them to study a technical education so it can be more gender.
I hope here that I can look back one day at this whole project and say, okay, this actually made a difference, and it was also really, really fun.
Thank you to show the voice of the young engineers. Now let's come back to our panelists. The next speech will be delivered by Sara, who is the representative lead for the youth in energy and sustainability. Yes, Europe. Sara, the floor is yours.
Yes, thank you very much, Professor Gong. Yes, I'll show some slides. So I hope you can see them now. And yes, so I will talk a bit about youth engagement in technology in the UNFCCC and in the energy and climate nexus. Yeah, so just a little bit about me. So I studied environmental and energy systems engineering at Lund University in Sweden, and also made an exchange here at ETH Zurich in Switzerland. So I wanted to become an engineer to solve problems and to contribute actively to a more sustainable future, in opposite to environmental scientists who mainly analyze how the state of the earth is getting worse. So regarding problems to solve, I thought, isn't the climate crisis the largest problem we have in our world today? So earlier I wanted to develop climate technologies, but the more I learned, the more I understood that we already have most of the technologies to reduce the global emissions. It's rather a problem of policy and economics. So that's why I also engaged in Push Sweden, to advocate for higher climate ambitions in the UN climate sphere. And Push Sweden is a Swedish youth network for sustainability and climate. And here, here are two photos from UN Climate Conference and a meeting of the UN CTC and Advisory Board, which I will mention in a second. And I also engaged in Yes Europe, which is Young Leaders in Energy and Sustainability Europe, because it's important to know more and connect with other people to get inspired and building connections. But as a profession, since 2 years, I'm working at the company South Pole with greenhouse gas accounting. So I calculate the carbon footprint of different companies and to help the companies to reduce their greenhouse gas emissions. But today I will focus on my engagements in my free time. So first, about the UNFCCC technology mechanism. It was established in 2010 by the COP, and the aim is to enhance technology development and transfer to developing countries. So why is technology important for climate change? There are a lot of climate technologies which can reduce the emissions a lot. But we also, of course, need policy and economic incentives. And the technology mechanism constitutes of two bodies. One is the Technology Executive Committee, which is the policy arm and giving policy suggestions to the UN climate conferences and to the parties. So I participated in their biannual meetings 2 times in 2019. And the other part is the CTC and the Climate Technology Center and Network, which constitutes of an advisory board where I participated 2 times in their meetings. And they also have a network with more than 500 members of organizations and universities and companies. So they're matching the countries which have a need of a certain technology with companies which can provide that climate technology. So why should we as youth engage in the technology mechanism? So the objectives are to get more young people involved in the UNFCCC technology mechanism. We want to provide and come with new inputs and share examples of youth involvement in climate technologies. And why is it important? Yes, young people are very engaged. We are creative and have new ideas and have new perspectives, and we develop innovative solutions. So what do we want to achieve? We want to involve more young people in climate technology projects and accelerate climate action towards climate neutrality and beyond. So here are some examples of the engagement of Youngo in the technology mechanism. And you who don't know Youngo, so Youngo is the youth NGOs, which is the youth constituency to the UNFCCC. So it is similar to the MGCY, the major group for children and youth, but focused on the UNFCCC, so the UN Framework Convention on Climate Change. So Youngo is gathering or like an umbrella for a lot of different youth organizations from all over the world who are participating in the UN climate conferences. So what I have done, I participated in the tech meetings where we had a group discussion. I am here. I also now, since COVID, there were several online events. So I also spoke at a webinar hosted by the Tech. Before that, in 2019, there was a side event by the CTCN and the Tech, where I also spoke as representing Yango. We also contributed to the CTCN progress report, where we wrote a chapter about youth engagement in the climate technologies. As I mentioned before, I participated in the CTCN advisory board meeting, and we had a meeting with the advisory board chair. But we are many, like Yango, we like to rotate. So we have, like now the last years, we have had many different young people engaging in the technology mechanisms. So we have also started a working group within Yango to get more young people involved in this area. So then to my other part, my other kind of focus of engagement is an organization called Yes Europe, so Young Leaders in Energy and Sustainability. And our vision is empowered youth who accelerate the energy transition through developing meaningful connections, exchange knowledge and learnings, as well as foster creativity and engagement to shape a sustainable future. And our role is to connect, empower, and give a platform for young leaders passionate about energy and sustainability across Europe. So yeah, we have around 2,000 members, and we have local teams in 15 different countries. And my role as the country representative lead is to coordinate the 15 or 17 country representatives who are managing their local teams. So we have both students and young professionals. People have diverse backgrounds from engineering, policy, and business. And we focus on the areas energy, sustainability, and climate change. So now I want to show you a video about the Yes Europe Climathon. So as an example of a project, I will show you this video. So it's a project which the actual climathon lasted for 48 hours. We had participants from 50 countries, so more countries so not only from Europe. There were 40 coaches. We had 375 participants, and they developed 34 projects, and we had 15 judges. So let's have a look at the after movie created after.
Should we set up a fundamental rights regime in order to avoid at any time?
Shoot for the heart, capture the mind, and make them smile.
I'm really proud of everyone.
What I can say though is that I'm deeply impressed by the quality of the work that I've seen.
Yeah, it's been a wonderful experience. Thank you.
Really enjoyed our 48 hours of hard work on the project.
What I liked a lot about the challenge was that we worked with people from all over the world.
I guess the funniest moment really is when the last 3 hours, to be honest, we completed our slide deck.
And of course, you need to have some fun as well between all the hard work.
The green forest. Delete, obsolete. Congratulations, guys.
Yes. So this was I'll see if I exit the whole thing. Yeah, so it was a big success, the Climate Fund, and we will organize it again. So we aim to, it was the first time last year, and it had a focus on creating a more sustainable world after COVID. But we aim to organize a climate fund like this every year from now, because yeah, it just was very, very cool and very enriching. And so, oops, sorry, now it's playing again. Yeah, so just wrapping up here, my last slide. So about this topic, so how to deploy global youth capacity in UN policy and engineering for SDG 13. So yeah, just first of all, engineers are super important. Like I see the purpose of engineers is to solve problems, but we need to be able to collaborate with people from diverse backgrounds. So not only other engineers, but also scientists and people from business and law background. My recommendation is to become active in an organization such as Yango, UNFCCC, Yes Europe, or Student Energy, another organization. And yeah, we need stronger collaboration between these organizations to get inspired, learn from each other, create connections, and come up with new solutions together. So to accelerate the transition to a sustainable planet. So yeah. Thank you very much. This was all from me. And yeah, back to the moderator.
Gongi?
President Gonke, can you hear us? Are you still with us? If not, maybe...
maybe disconnect and reconnect to the webinar.
Firas, if you don't mind, maybe we could give the floor to our next speaker because time is running out.
Yes, please.
Agree?
I agree, sure, yeah. We need to move to the next speaker. I guess we're having Emma.
Yes, thank you, Firas.
Fossen from Trane Technologies. The floor is yours. Sorry.
Thank you. I'll start sharing my screen. Great, thank you, Firas, and thank you to the WFEO and especially the YEFL committee for organizing this event and for inviting us to speak. I'm Emma Van Fossen. I'm a product engineer in Trane Technologies Engineering Accelerated Development Program, a program for young engineers aimed at developing a diverse technical skill set and foundation for leadership. I'm very pleased to represent Trane Technologies today and focus on the role of industry in climate action. Trane Technologies is a climate innovator with a global presence, including 34 manufacturing locations and over 35,000 employees across the world. We have 3 businesses: commercial heating, ventilation, and air conditioning, or HVAC, residential HVAC, and supply, both of which focus on creating healthy, safe, reliable, comfortable, and efficient buildings. And also transport refrigeration, which is responsible for creating temperature-controlled systems to keep transported goods fresh and safe for consumption. All 3 of these businesses have an incredible opportunity to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. Heating and cooling of residential and commercial buildings accounts for approximately 15% of total global emissions. Buildings consume about 40% of all electricity produced, and on average, HVAC systems account for about 40% of building energy consumption. So we get 15 to 16% of total global emissions. Additionally, food loss accounts for another 10% of global emissions. Nearly 1/3 of all of the food produced across the world is lost or wasted. So together, these sectors already account for about 1/4 of global greenhouse gas emissions, but that share is projected to rise even further to 35% without any climate action on behalf of the industries in these sectors. So we can see that the heating, ventilation, air conditioning, and refrigeration, or HVAC and R industry, has a significant opportunity and an obligation to pursue climate action. Trane Technologies is proud to lead the industry in this effort through our sustainability commitments. Our Gigaton Challenge, which is our commitment to reduce our customers' greenhouse gas footprint by 1 gigaton by the end of the decade, was the first of its kind among industrial manufacturers. To reach our goal of the Gigaton Challenge, we're focusing on 4 major areas. First, accelerating clean technologies, developing new and better ways to heat and cool buildings and transported perishables. We've already reduced the use phase emissions of our products by over 20 million metric tons since 2014, and we're continuing this effort with over $500 million invested in research and development focused on climate change solutions, including strategic electrification of heating and building controls, among others. Second, we're focusing on addressing system energy efficiency. We're doing this through system HVAC optimization and even going beyond HVAC systems, including our building energy efficiency services and controls to provide a coordinated and adaptive approach to building management and reduce the energy intensity of buildings. Third, we're reducing food loss from the cold chain. We're doing this, of course, through our transport refrigeration portfolio, including our next generation transport refrigeration units, which dramatically lower the greenhouse gas footprint of each trailer unit, while also providing logistical support to increase overall fleet efficiency. We also have an initiative called We Move Food, which is a hunger relief program developed to help reduce food waste and increase access to fresh, nutritious food. Finally, our last focus is transitioning away from high global warming potential, or GWP, refrigerants. We're doing this by 2030 ahead of regulations, and our next generation chillers use low GWP alternatives to 410A refrigerant. Through these actions, we can bend the curve to mitigate climate impact and leave the planet in a better situation for our generation as young engineers and the generations that follow us. Our Gigaton Challenge is just one of our commitments to a better future, aligned with the UN Sustainable Development Goals. We are also leading by example through pursuing carbon neutral operations, 10% absolute energy reduction in our operations, zero waste to landfill at our facilities, and net positive water consumption in water-stressed areas by the year 2030. We're also creating opportunity for all through committing to gender parity in leadership, workforce diversity reflective of the communities in which we operate, and STEM education. We were the first in our industry to sign Paradigm for Parity for gender equality in leadership, and we're a founding member of the 110 Coalition to hire 1 million Black Americans. We've been recognized multiple years on Forbes' Best Employers for Diversity list. In the words of our former CEO, Mike Lamach, one company can change an industry and one industry can change the world. At Trane Technologies, we recognize our role in reducing global megatrends, and we're committed to contributing to a better future through our sustainability commitments. It's imperative for all industries, not just HVAC and R, to recognize the opportunity and obligation to make a difference through sustainable action on climate, workforce, and education initiatives. Thank you again to WFEO and YEFL for the opportunity to speak on this, and I'm looking forward to the Q&A session.
Thank you, Emma, for this presentation. Prof. Gonki, you're here. Emma, finalize your presentation.
Yeah. Please go ahead. Please go ahead. The next one is Milda. Milda, please. Milda is the head of the working group for SDG 13.
Okay, thank you very much. We're running out of time, so I'll be quick.
Yeah, please.
I will speak about the challenge which we have according to the UN in progress on achieving SDG 14 targets, the latest report for 2021. Then what opportunity we have for deploying youth in UN policy and engineering for overcoming those challenges. And I will conclude with an action, how we step up as a joint statement for collaboration. Despite the setbacks of a pandemic, preliminary data show, according to the UN, that global greenhouse gas emissions increased last year. And this puts in the achievement of many SDGs at risk. Hence, UN encouraged for the global efforts which are required, which if we still want to reach the net zero CO2 emissions globally around 2050. Young people are critical stakeholders in contributing to reaching SDG 14 targets by the next decade and net zero CO2 emissions globally by 2050. Youth in the UN policies is key in establishing and supporting reviewing initiative which accelerates progress on climate action. And young engineers are critical in providing solutions to meet those targets. However, the coordinated capacity between those two communities of global young engineers and UN youth has not been fully deployed yet. This is why we have set up at World Federation of Engineering Organizations Committee for Young Engineers, Future Leaders, a working group on SDG 14 to include young engineers into global climate emergency work. The aim of this working group is to contribute to the sustainable development of countries by streamlining national initiatives carried by young engineers from 100 national engineering associations, so we contribute to the United Nations targets. This will be achieved by supporting each association in preparing the national young engineer strategy in line with UN climate finance trends and UN youth initiatives. Our focus areas are: first is climate mitigation, so it's decarbonization, climate neutral technologies, resource efficiency. Second, climate adaptation, so it's resilient infrastructure. That is in particular very relevant to civil engineers. And the last one is in particular also very important, is development of STEM skills required to meet SDG 14 targets in line with the investment trends for green transition and changes due to the pandemic. Our overarching aspirations and objectives is first to promote in particular closer cooperation between the young engineers from the most developed and developing regions, and promote the cooperation between the policymakers and engineers. So as an example, how we can together participate at COP26. This is the list of all our countries where we have national member engineering organizations, 100 of them. Those highlighted in dark green, it's around 50, we are already in contact with, or we already start working on the national young engineer strategy, but we aim to reach all of them. So now we have those three major stakeholders: our global young engineers community, the major group for children and youth science policy interface platform from the UN, and the youth advisory group on climate change, who advises United Nations Secretary General on climate change strategy. All these three global youth stakeholders, all very important, have committed for the joint statement and agreed to do the following. First of all, to support our young engineers in preparing a strategy for SDG 14 initiatives, addressing national challenges and opportunities in climate mitigation, adaptation, engineering measures, which are aligned to and contribute to the UN youth initiatives. Second, share and promote best practices and initiatives for attracting and upskilling talents in STEM for SDG 14. further pandemic recovery in line with the demands arising from the green investments. And last, we agreed to cooperate on COP26. And this is already a great example how youth networks can efficiently cooperate. I can share that this joint statement was prepared within a couple of days, but this wouldn't happen without the support from United Nations. Once again, thank you very much, United Nations Secretary General Youth Advisors on Climate Action, and they lead and chair Nisreen, very inspiring speech. Major Group for Children and Youth Science Policy Interface Platform. Thank you very much, Sara, Marta, and Victoria, focal points. UNESCO, it is an honor to collaborate with you, Manon, on Youth UNESCO Climate Action Network, UCAN. Thank you very much, Working Group on SDG 14 volunteers, a great, bright volunteers from various countries, and also all our young engineers representatives who volunteer their spare time for this work. Lastly, thank you very much for all senior professionals at World Federation of Engineering Organizations and industry who lead us, who guide us and support. I'm very glad, very excited. I'm very looking forward for our continuous work. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Milda. And the statement, the joint statement is already uploaded to the website of the High Level Political Forum and on the website of WFEO. Because we have run out of time, please allow me to give the last minutes to the President-elect, Professor José Vieira, to give his concluding remarks. José, the floor is yours.
Okay. Thank you, Professor Gong, our president. First of all, let me congratulate the speakers for the excellent speeches and word special for Dr. Shamila Nair-Bedouelle for her very, very opportune messages today. Well, dear ladies and gentlemen, it's very difficult to me to make some conclusions after these so rich and inspired presentations, but I will try to see if I can give some conclusions. And I found some challenges and some solutions that are given for by our speakers. I start with some keywords about the challenges, and I can find sustainability and climate change. And we see, you know, that we are presently faced to global megatrends, and these megatrends continue to intensify, increasing, for example, the world population, mainly in the South Hemisphere, continuous urbanization with the creation and of more and more megacities. We face also extreme events, floods, earthquakes, drought, and greenhouse gas emissions coming from industry and agriculture. So these are some of these keywords that I found from the previous speeches. So, but we need and we must have engineering solutions for these problems. We can find some of these ideas for solutions in the UNESCO engineer report, where we can find some very important issues. For example, in the field of water, sanitation, and hygiene. Dr. Shamila stressed that water is life, and I can add that yes, water is life, and sanitation is human dignity. So these 2 points are very important, and when we see this very difficult situation with 1 billion people, 1 billion lacking access to safe drinking water, 2.5 or 2.4 billion lacking access to sanitation. We have, of course, waterborne diseases when we can see that children under 5 years are the most dramatic affected from this. And the pandemic that we have now gives to us the precise image about the difficulty from large parts of our globe without these basic services, these basic infrastructures. But also linked with the water, we can see also lack of food in a lot of regions of this planet. And we must need new sustainable energy sources and special focus on engineer education. It's important to have more and more people linked with the real problems and for real solutions. Well, we in engineering and our view of engineers are very, very important to have new and inspired innovative solutions for the benefit of humankind and for the environment. It's very important, this. And we can expect, you must expect from the young engineers this commitment, very important commitment to solve these kind of problems with his creativeness, new ideas, innovative technical solutions. But above all these requirements, we must have a new culture about the human being and about the environment. So I know that I have not so much time, but these are, from my point of view, the big message from this very, very interesting webinar. Mr. President Gong.
Thank you very much, José. We have no more time, but I will ask all panelists try to answer the questions. We do get some questions in the Q&A sheet. Our secretariat will share this with all of you, and please ask these questions, as many as you can. Please let me say by Monday, and I will send back to our participants. So thank you all, panelists, Shamila, and all participants to this webinar. Let's keep in touch and work together to accelerate the delivery of the SDGs. Thank you all. The webinar is end.
Congratulations and thank you very much. Bravo, WFEO. Thank you.
Thank you, Shamila.
Bravo, thank you, panelists. You've been brilliant.
We will
excellent work from all of you. Thank you, Professor Gonke, Professor Vieira. Amazing. Thank you, WFEO.
Shamila, we will try to make another opportunity for you to make the statement of the open science and open engineering science.
Thank you. I'm actually going to another panel to make a statement on open science. I mean, another panel at the same time. But to Manon, to Sara, to Firas, Emma, Milda, Nisreen, José, Professor Gonke, all WFEO. Bravo. Fantastic.
Thank you.
Shamila. Congratulations.
Congratulations to all of you.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.